The silver ship moved through space like a quiet ghost. It was 3 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. The ship's name was Cosmic Dawn, and it belonged to beings called the Zephyrians. These aliens had crystal-like skin that sparkled blue and green in the light. They were tall, much taller than humans, and their eyes glowed with soft yellow light. Commander Vexter stood on the bridge of his ship. He looked out at the small yellow star ahead of them. This was the Sol system, and the 3rd planet from... The star was called Earth. The commander's 4 arms moved across the control panels as he read the reports from his crew. "What do the scans show?" Vexter asked his science officer. Crindle looked up from her station. Her crystal face showed no emotion, which was normal for their kind. "The 3rd planet has life, Commander. There is one main species that seems to control most of the planet. They call themselves humans." Vexter nodded. In his long life, he had visited hundreds of worlds. The Zephyrians were explorers. They traveled the galaxy to study different species and learn about their cultures. Most species they found were either too primitive to be interesting or too dangerous to approach. "Are they advanced?" the commander asked. "No, sir. They have only recently learned to fly in space. Their technology is very basic. They still use chemical rockets to leave their planet. Their weapons are simple explosives and metal projectiles." Crindle's voice was flat and bored. "I would classify them as Category 7. Category 7 was the lowest rating the Zephyrians gave to intelligent species. It meant the species was too weak and primitive to be worth much attention. They were not smart enough to be useful allies, not advanced enough to trade with, and not strong enough to be threats." "Very well," Vexter said. "We will observe them for a few weeks and then move on." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Morgan was working late at the radio telescope facility in Arizona. She had been searching for signs of alien life for most of her career. At 45 years old, she had almost given up hope of finding anything. Then her computer started beeping loudly. "What is that?" she asked herself as she looked at the screen. The signal was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was clearly artificial, and it was coming from just outside Earth's solar system. Lisa grabbed her phone and called her supervisor. "Dr. Carter, you need to get down here right now. I think we have something." Within hours, news of the alien signal reached the highest levels of government. President Jake Collins was woken up at 3 in the morning by his chief of staff. He quickly called an emergency meeting with his top advisors. "Are we sure this is real?" President Collins asked. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Leading the most powerful country on Earth was hard enough without having to deal with aliens. "Yes, sir," said Secretary of Defense Amy Walsh. "We have confirmed the signal at 3 different facilities. There is definitely something out there." NASA Administrator Chris Bradley leaned forward in his chair. "Mr. President, we should try to make contact. This could be the most important moment in human history." The president nodded slowly. "Do it, but be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with." Back on the Cosmic Dawn, the Zephyrians watched as humans detected their presence. The aliens had not been trying to hide, but they were surprised at how quickly the humans found them. "They are more observant than I expected," Crindle said. "Should we make contact?" "Yes," Vexter replied. "It will save us time. We can learn about their culture directly, instead of just watching them." The Zephyrians sent a message to Earth. It was transmitted in broken English, which they had learned by listening to human radio signals. The message was simple. "Greetings from the Zephyrian Collective. We come in peace. We wish to study your species." When the message reached Earth, it caused panic and excitement in equal measure. World leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists worked around the clock to understand the alien technology. Military forces were put on high alert, though everyone knew that if the aliens wanted to harm Earth, There was probably nothing humans could do to stop them. Dr. Lisa Morgan found herself at the center of it all. She was chosen to lead the human response team because she had discovered the signal. Standing in the communication center, she spoke into the microphone with shaking hands. "This is Dr. Lisa Morgan, speaking for the people of Earth. We welcome you to our solar system. We also come in peace and wish to learn about your people." The response came quickly. "We will observe your species for a short time. Do not be alarmed. We will not interfere with your daily lives." Over the next few days, the Zephyrians began their study of humanity. They used their advanced sensors to watch human cities, military bases, and centers of learning. What they saw confirmed their initial assessment. Humans were a primitive species that had barely learned to use fire. Relatively speaking, the aliens watched human soldiers training with their basic weapons. They saw human scientists working with simple computers. They observed human leaders making decisions that seemed emotional rather than logical. Everything they saw told them that humans were just another weak species on a small, unimportant planet. "They are exactly what we expected," Crindle reported to her commander. "They are aggressive toward each other, but their technology is centuries behind ours. Their bodies are small and weak. They cannot survive in space without bulky suits. They are short-lived and spend most of their time fighting among themselves." Vexter reviewed the data. The humans had shown them their greatest achievements: tall buildings, fast aircraft, and powerful computers. But to beings who could travel between stars, these accomplishments seemed like children's toys. "Continue the observations," he ordered, "but prepare to leave soon. There is nothing here that requires our attention." The Zephyrians had made this same assessment thousands of times before. They had visited countless worlds and met hundreds of species. They had learned to quickly identify which species were worth their time and which were not. Humans clearly fell into the second category. On Earth, people watched the sky nervously. The alien ship was too far away to see with the naked eye, but everyone knew it was there. Some people were excited about the possibility of learning from an advanced alien race. Others were scared that the aliens might decide humans were too dangerous to live. But the Zephyrians were not concerned about humans being dangerous. From their perspective, humans were just another primitive species that would probably destroy itself long before it became advanced enough to matter. They had seen it happen many times before. As the first week of observation ended, Commander Vexter was already planning their next destination. The galaxy was full of interesting species and phenomena to study. There was no reason to waste more time on the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. He had no idea that his assessment of humanity was about to change in ways he could never imagine. 3 weeks had passed since the Zephyrians arrived at Earth. Commander Vexter was growing impatient. His crew had gathered enough basic information about human society, technology, and culture. It was time to move on to more interesting worlds. "Crindle," he said to his science officer, "conduct one final scan of the human population. Get detailed biological data for our records. Then we will leave." Crindle nodded and began preparing the ship's most advanced scanning equipment. The bioscanners could analyze the internal structure of any living creature from thousands of miles away. They could see inside bones, measure muscle density, and even examine brain activity patterns. "Beginning deep biological scan of human population," Crindle announced. "This will take approximately 6 hours to complete." The scanning beam was invisible to human eyes, but it touched every person on Earth. It passed through buildings, clothes, and skin like they were made of glass. The scanner collected data on millions of humans in cities, towns, and remote areas. On Earth, Dr. Kevin Torres was diving in the Pacific Ocean near California. He was studying coral reefs and how they were affected by climate change. Kevin had been diving for 20 years and knew the ocean better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. As he swam along the reef, Kevin noticed something strange. The water around him seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. His diving computer started showing unusual readings. The electromagnetic sensors were picking up energy signatures. They should not exist in the ocean. That's weird, Kevin thought to himself. He made a mental note to check his equipment when he got back to the surface. At the same time, Colonel Susan Grant was working in the NORAD facility deep inside Cheyenne Mountain. She was monitoring Earth's airspace for any threats. The facility's sensitive equipment could detect aircraft, missiles, and satellites from thousands of miles away. "Colonel," called out Sergeant Billy Peterson from his station, "we're getting some unusual readings from the atmosphere. There's some kind of energy pattern sweeping across the globe." Susan walked over to look at the screen. The energy readings were unlike anything she had seen before. They were too organized to be natural, but they did not match any known human technology either. "Keep monitoring it," she ordered, "and run a full diagnostic on our systems. This might be equipment failure." In a hospital in Chicago, Dr. Rachel Green was having one of the strangest days of her medical career. She was working in the emergency room, treating patients who came in with various injuries and illnesses. But something unusual was happening. A man came in with a broken arm from a car accident. Normally, this type of fracture would take 6 to 8 weeks to heal. But the X-rays showed that the bone was already beginning to repair itself much faster than normal. The same thing was happening with other patients too. A woman with a severe cut on her leg was healing so quickly that Rachel had to look at the wound twice to make sure she was seeing correctly. A child with a concussion was showing signs of recovery in just hours instead of days. "Dr. Martinez," Rachel called to her colleague, "are you seeing anything unusual with your patients today?" Dr. Martinez looked up from his chart. "Now that you mention it, yes. Recovery times seem to be faster than normal, but I figured I was just imagining things." Rachel frowned. In 15 years of practicing medicine, she had never seen anything like this. She decided to start keeping detailed notes on all her patients. Back on the Cosmic Dawn, the scanning was nearly complete. Kringle was reviewing the data as it came in, expecting to see the typical biological patterns of a primitive species. Instead, she found herself staring at results that made no sense. "Computer," she said, "run a full diagnostic on the bioscanner." The readings appeared to be incorrect. The ship's AI responded immediately. "All scanning equipment is functioning normally. No errors detected." Kringle looked at the data again. According to the scans, humans had muscle fiber density that was nearly 3 times higher than what their external appearance suggested. Their bone structure was incredibly dense and strong. Most surprising of all, their nervous systems showed patterns that indicated extreme intelligence and adaptability. "This cannot be right," she muttered. She ran the scans again on a smaller group of humans. The results were the same. Commander Vexter was in his private quarters when Kringle contacted him. "Commander, I need you to come to the science lab. Immediately, we have a problem." When Vexter arrived, he found his science officer staring at screens full of biological data. Her usually calm demeanor had been replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "What is it?" he asked. "Sir, the biological scans of humans are showing results that do not match our initial observations. According to this data, humans should be far stronger and more intelligent than they appear to be." Vexter studied the screens. The data showed that human muscles were built for incredible strength. Their bones were dense enough to withstand forces that would crush most other species. Their brains showed neural pathways that suggested problem-solving abilities far beyond what they had demonstrated. "Are you certain the equipment is working correctly?" he asked. "I have run diagnostics 3 times, sir." The equipment is functioning perfectly. But this data suggests that humans are operating at only a fraction of their true capability. The commander felt something he had not experienced in many years: confusion. In all his travels, he had never encountered a species that seemed to be holding back their true potential. Most species used every advantage they had to survive and thrive. Run deeper scans, he ordered. Focus on their stress responses and physical capabilities under extreme conditions. Meanwhile, people on Earth were beginning to notice small changes in themselves. Construction worker Mike Johnson was lifting steel beams that should have required 3 people. He had been working construction for 12 years and had never been this strong before. "Hey, Pete," he called to his coworker. "Have you been feeling stronger lately?" Pete Williams stopped what he was doing and thought about it. "Yeah, actually. I moved my couch yesterday by myself, and that thing usually takes 4 guys to lift." Similar conversations were happening all over the world. People were running faster, thinking more clearly, and recovering from injuries more quickly than ever. Before, most people assumed they were just having a good day, or that their exercise routines were finally paying off. But some people were starting to notice patterns. News reporter Helen Davis was working on a story about unusual incidents around the country. She had received reports of people performing incredible feats of strength and intelligence. A mother in Texas had lifted a car off her trapped child. A student in New York had solved a complex math problem that had stumped professors for years. A firefighter in California had carried 5 people out of a burning building without getting tired. "There's something happening," Helen said to her editor. "I don't know what it is, but people are doing things they shouldn't be able to do." Her editor, Bob Turner, was skeptical. "Come on, Helen. People have always done incredible things in emergencies." "It's called adrenaline. This is different," Helen insisted. "This is happening to ordinary people doing ordinary things. And it's happening everywhere." Dr. Lisa Morgan was also noticing changes. She had been working longer hours than usual, analyzing data from the alien ship. Normally, she would be exhausted after 18-hour days. Instead, she felt more alert and focused than she had in years. Her team was making connections and solving problems faster than ever before. Computer programmer Sarah Hill had written more code in the past week than she normally did in a month. Mathematician Dr. Robert Kim had proven a theorem that had been unsolved for decades. "Something is affecting us," Lisa said during a team meeting. "The timing is too coincidental. The aliens arrive, and suddenly everyone is performing better than normal." Back on the Cosmic Dawn, the deeper scans were revealing even more disturbing information. The Zephyrians discovered that humans had biological systems that were designed to limit their own capabilities. It was as if their bodies had built-in safety mechanisms that prevented them from using their full potential. "This is unprecedented," Krindle reported to her commander. "No species we have encountered has evolved systems to suppress their own abilities." Vexther studied the data with growing concern. "Why would they do this?" "I believe it is a survival mechanism, sir. Their planet is extremely dangerous. If humans used their full capabilities all the time, they would likely injure themselves or burn out their biological systems." The implications were staggering. If humans were naturally limiting themselves, what would happen if those limits were removed? What was the true potential of this species that the Zephyrians had dismissed as primitive and weak? "Continue the She analysis," Vexther ordered. "I want to understand exactly what we are dealing with." For the first time since arriving at Earth, the Zephyrians realized they might have made a serious mistake in their assessment of humanity. These were not weak, primitive beings. They were something far more complex and potentially dangerous than anyone had imagined. The scanning had awakened something in humans that had been sleeping for their entire evolutionary history. And the Zephyrians were about to discover just how wrong they had been about the inhabitants of the third planet. The Zephyrians had been studying humans for 5 weeks now, and Commander Vexter was no longer bored. The biological scans had revealed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligent life in the galaxy. "Show me." The stress response data, he ordered Crindle. The science officer brought up new screens filled with complex diagrams and numbers. "Sir, when humans experience extreme stress or danger, their bodies release chemicals that temporarily override their natural limiters. During these moments, they can access much more of their true physical and mental potential." Vexter studied the data. "How much more?" "Based on our analysis, humans operating under extreme stress can be up to 5 times stronger than normal. Their reaction times become faster than our own. Their problem-solving abilities increase dramatically. And most importantly, they seem to feel no pain or fear while in this state." The commander's crystal skin darkened slightly, which was a sign of worry among his people. "You are saying that this primitive species becomes superhuman when threatened?" "That appears to be correct, sir. We have been observing their history files. There are countless examples of humans performing impossible feats during emergencies. They call it adrenaline, but it is much more than that." Kringle brought up historical records that the Zephyrians had collected from human databases. The files showed stories of incredible human achievements that had been dismissed as myths or exaggerations. Now they understood these stories were probably true. There were accounts of mothers lifting cars to save their children, soldiers fighting with mortal wounds that should have killed them, scientists solving complex problems in minutes while under extreme pressure, athletes breaking records that seemed impossible. "Look at this," Kringle said, pointing to a file. "This human named Eddie Hall lifted 500 kilograms over his head. That should be impossible for a creature of his size. But under extreme stress, his body accessed its hidden strength. On Earth, these hidden capabilities were becoming more obvious every day. Mike Johnson was working on a construction site in downtown Los Angeles when disaster struck. A crane malfunctioned and dropped a steel beam toward a group of workers below. Without thinking, Mike jumped forward and caught the beam with his bare hands. The steel weighed over 300 pounds, but Mike held it steady while the other workers got to safety. Only after the danger passed did he realize what he had done. "How did I do that?" he asked his supervisor later. "I've never been that strong before." His supervisor, Danny Rodriguez, shook his head in amazement. "I don't know, Mike, but you saved 3 lives today." Similar incidents were happening all over the world. In New York, police officer Janet Wright chased down a criminal who was running faster than any human should be able to move. But Janet caught up with him, running at speeds that broke several world records. In London, England, Dr. Henry Foster was working in a hospital when a complicated surgery went wrong. The patient was dying, and there was no time to call for help. Dr. Foster found himself performing surgical procedures that normally took teams of specialists. His hands moved with perfect precision, and his mind calculated complex medical decisions. In seconds, the patient lived, but Dr. Foster could not explain how he had done it. "I knew things I had never learned," he told his colleagues. "It was like someone else was guiding my hands." Back on the cosmic dawn, the Zephyrians were making even more disturbing discoveries. They had begun studying human history in detail, and what they found changed their understanding of the entire species. "Commander," Crindle said urgently, "you need to see this. I have analyzed human historical records going back thousands of years. This species has never known peace." Vexther looked at the data. Human history was a continuous record of conflict, struggle, and survival in surpassable odds. Wars, natural disasters, diseases, and countless other challenges had shaped human development for their entire existence. Their entire evolution has been driven by the need to survive, Crindle continued. They have lived on what we would classify as a death world. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and countless other disasters have forced them to adapt or die. The implications were staggering. While other species had evolved in stable environments, humans had been forged by constant struggle. Their bodies and minds had been shaped by the need to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. Look at their mythology, Crindle said, bringing up more files. Their heroes are not peaceful leaders or great thinkers. Their heroes are warriors who fight impossible battles and win through sheer determination. The Zephyrians began to understand that humans were not just another species. They were survivors of a world that would have killed most other forms of life. Their apparent weakness was actually camouflage for abilities that other species could not match. Dr. Lisa Morgan was experiencing these changes herself. She had been working with her team to analyze the alien technology, and they were making progress at an incredible rate. Problems that should have taken months to solve were being completed in days. I feel like my brain is running faster than it ever has, she told her colleague, Dr. Paul Watson. I'm seeing connections and patterns that I never noticed before. Dr. Watson nodded. The whole team is performing better. Sarah Hill wrote a program yesterday that should have taken weeks to complete, and Dr. Kim solved 3 mathematical proofs in one afternoon. What they did not know was that the Zephyrian scanning technology was slowly removing the biological limiters that had kept humans operating at reduced capacity their entire lives. The aliens had accidentally awakened humanity's true potential. In a small town in Ohio, teacher Mary Johnson was dealing with a crisis at her school. A gas leak had caused an explosion, and part of the building was collapsing. Mary found herself thinking faster and more clearly than ever before. She organized the evacuation with perfect efficiency, calculating escape routes and timing in her head like a computer. She carried injured students to safety with strength she did not know she possessed. When firefighters arrived, they found that Mary had already handled the emergency better than most trained professionals could have. How did you know what to do? Asked Fire Chief Tom Bradley. Mary shook her head. I don't know. I just knew. The Zephyrians were beginning to realize what they had done. Their scanning technology was designed to analyze biological systems, but it was also affecting those systems in unexpected ways. The energy beams were gradually deactivating the genetic switches that kept human capabilities suppressed. We may have made a serious error, Vexta told his crew during an emergency meeting. Our scans are changing them. We are accidentally removing the biological limiters that keep them stable. His tactical officer, a being named Zilkroth, spoke up. Sir, what are the implications if all humans gain access to their full potential? Vexter considered the question. Based on their analysis, humans with full access to their capabilities would be stronger than most warrior species in the galaxy. They would be more intelligent than most research species, and they would be more adaptable than any species the Zephyrians had ever encountered. If that happens, he said slowly, humans may become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The changes were accelerating. Around the world, humans were performing feats that should have been impossible. A farmer in Kansas named Bill Stevens lifted a tractor off his injured son. A student in Tokyo named Yuki Tanaka solved a physics problem that had stumped her professors for years. But it was not just physical strength and intelligence that was increasing. Humans were also developing enhanced senses and intuition. They could sense danger before it happened, understand complex situations instantly, and coordinate with each other in ways that seemed almost telepathic. News reporter Helen Davis was finally getting the attention she needed for her story. The incidents were becoming too numerous and too obvious to ignore. Government officials were starting to take notice. Something is happening to people all over the world, she reported. On the evening news, ordinary citizens are performing extraordinary feats. Scientists are working to understand what is causing these changes, but one thing is clear: humanity is changing. The Zephyrians watched the news reports with growing alarm. They had come to study a primitive species, but they had accidentally awakened something that could threaten the balance of power in the entire galaxy. "We need to contact the High Council," Vexter told his crew. "They need to know what we have discovered." But first, they had to understand exactly what they were dealing with. The scans had revealed that humans were not just physically and mentally superior to what they had initially appeared. They were also incredibly resilient, adaptable, and unified when faced with a common threat. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of judging humans by their current technology and peaceful behavior. They had not realized that this was a species that had survived every challenge their harsh world had thrown at them. Now, with their natural limiters beginning to fail, humans were starting to show their true nature, and the Zephyrians were beginning to understand that they had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. Commander Vexter stood before the communication array on his ship, preparing to make the most important report of his career. The message would travel faster than light to the Zephyrian High Council, located thousands of light years away in the galactic core. "Council members," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of what he was about to reveal. "I must report that our initial assessment of the human species was catastrophically incorrect. The response came within hours. The High Council consisted of the 12 most experienced commanders and scientists in Zephyrian history. They had guided their species through centuries of galactic exploration and had never encountered a situation like this. "Explain yourself, Commander," came the reply from Council Leader Morthic. "Your preliminary reports classified humans as Category 7. Are you now saying they pose a threat?" Vexter took a deep breath. "I am saying they may be the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, not because of their technology, but because of what they truly are. On Earth, the changes were becoming impossible to ignore." Former Navy SEAL Dan Miller was working as a security consultant for a tech company in Silicon Valley. He had always been in excellent physical condition, but now he was performing at levels that defied explanation. During a routine training exercise, Dan completed an obstacle course in half the time it had taken him during his military service. His reflexes were faster than any human had ever achieved. His strength had increased so much that he had to be careful not to break equipment. "This is impossible," he told his friend and fellow veteran, Captain Steve Davis. "I'm 42 years old. I should be slowing down, not getting stronger." Steve nodded. He had been experiencing similar changes. "It's not just us, Dan. Every veteran I know is reporting the same thing. We're all performing better than we did when we were 20. The military implications were staggering. If all humans were developing enhanced capabilities, it would change warfare forever. A single human soldier with these abilities could potentially defeat entire units of normal troops. In Washington, D.C., President Jake Collins was meeting with his top advisors. The reports coming in from around the world were beyond anything they had imagined when first contact was made. "Mr. President," said Secretary of Defense Amy Walsh, "we need to understand what the aliens have done to us. Our military personnel are reporting capabilities that exceed anything we thought possible." CIA Director Frank Morrison leaned forward. "It's not just the military, sir. We're seeing enhanced performance in every field. Scientists, doctors, engineers, even office workers are performing at superhuman levels." President Collins rubbed his temples. "Are we sure this is connected to the alien presence?" "The timing is too coincidental," replied NASA Administrator Chris Bradley. "The changes started shortly after they began their detailed scans of our population. Back on the Cosmic Dawn, the Zephyrians were learning more about human potential every day. Crindle had been analyzing human literature, movies, and cultural records, trying to understand how humans viewed their own capabilities. "Commander," she reported, "humans have always known about their hidden potential. Their fiction is full of stories about people gaining superhuman abilities. They call them superheroes." Vexther studied the cultural files. Human entertainment was filled with characters who possessed exactly the kind of abilities that real humans were now developing. Super strength, enhanced intelligence, incredible speed, and the ability to push through any obstacle. It is as if they have been dreaming about becoming what they truly are. He observed that the High Council's response to his report was swift and alarmed. Within days, 3 more Zephyrian ships arrived at Earth, carrying some of the most advanced scientists and military strategists in their civilization. Council. Leader Morthek himself came aboard the Cosmic Dawn to review the data personally. He was an ancient being, even by Zephyrian standards, and had supervised the cataloging of over 1,000 species. "Show me everything," he ordered. Vexther got the evidence was overwhelming. Humans were not just another primitive species. They were a warrior race that had been holding back their true nature for their entire existence. Their bodies were designed for conflict. Their minds were adapted for problem-solving under extreme pressure, and their spirits were forged by countless generations of struggle. "Look at their physical structure," Crindle explained to the Council. "Leader, their bones are denser than most species we have encountered. Their muscles are built for explosive power. Their nervous systems are designed for rapid decision-making in life-or-death situations." Morthek studied the data with growing concern. "And you say they have been suppressing these abilities?" "Yes, sir. Their bodies have natural limiters that prevent them from using their full potential. It appears to be an evolutionary safety mechanism. Their world is so dangerous that using their full capabilities all the time would burn out their biological systems." The implications for the galaxy were staggering. The Zephyrians had built their civilization on the principle that no single species should dominate others. They had achieved peace through careful balance and mutual respect. But humans threatened to upset that balance entirely. "What is their current population?" Morthek asked. "Approximately 8 billion individuals," Vexther replied. The Council leader's crystal skin darkened to a deep purple, indicating extreme alarm. 8 billion beings with superhuman capabilities could theoretically conquer the entire galaxy. If they chose to do so. On Earth, the changes were accelerating beyond anything the Zephyrians had predicted. Computer programmer Sarah Hill was working on a project that involved analyzing traffic patterns for a major city. The work normally would have taken months, but Sarah completed it in 3 days. "I'm seeing patterns in the data that I never noticed before," she told her supervisor, Mark Chun. "It's like my brain is processing information faster than ever." Mark nodded. "The whole department is performing better. We've solved more problems this week than we normally do in a month." But the changes were not limited to mental capabilities. Physical abilities were increasing at an alarming rate. Construction workers were lifting objects that should have required machinery. Athletes were breaking records that had stood for decades. Even elderly people were showing strength and endurance that defied their age. Dr. Rachel Green was documenting these changes in her hospital. Patient recovery times had decreased dramatically. People were healing from injuries that should have left them permanently disabled. The human body seemed to be repairing itself with incredible efficiency. "I've been practicing medicine for 15 years, she told her colleague, Dr. James Martinez. "I've never seen anything like this. It's as if the human body is remembering how to heal itself properly." The Zephyrians were beginning to understand that they had not just awakened human potential. They had activated something that had been dormant in the species for thousands of years. Humans were returning to their true nature as survivors and warriors. We need to make a decision, Morthic told the assembled commanders. Do we attempt to reverse what we have done, or do we try to establish peaceful relations before they become too powerful? The choice was complicated by the fact that humans were still unaware of their true capabilities. They knew they were changing, but they did not understand the full extent of what they were becoming. There is another factor to consider, Vexter added. Our scans have revealed that humans have an unusual capacity for cooperation when faced with a common threat. If they perceive us as enemies, they may unite against us. The thought of 8 billion superhuman beings working together was terrifying to contemplate. No species in galactic history had ever faced such a threat. Meanwhile, governments on Earth were beginning to realize the scope of what was happening. Intelligence agencies were reporting that human capabilities were increasing across all populations, regardless of age, nationality, or physical condition. We need to understand what this means for our future, President Collins told his advisors. If every human is developing these abilities, how will it change our society? The question had no easy answer. Enhanced humans would need new laws, new social structures, and new ways of interacting with each other. The old world was disappearing, and no one knew what would replace it. But the Zephyrians knew one thing for certain. Humanity was no longer the primitive species they had come to study. They were becoming something that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for the rise of humanity, or whether this awakening would lead to a conflict that would change the course of galactic history forever. It happened on a Tuesday morning at exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Every human on Earth felt it at the same moment. The sensation was like waking up from a dream they had been having their entire lives. The Zephyrian scanning equipment had reached a critical threshold. After weeks of gradual changes, the biological limiters that had kept humanity suppressed for thousands of years finally gave way completely. For exactly 11 minutes and 37 seconds, every human on the planet experienced their full potential. Dr. Lisa Morgan was in her laboratory when the awakening happened. Suddenly, her mind was processing information at incredible speeds. She could see patterns in the alien technology that had been invisible before. Complex equations solved themselves in her head without effort. "Oh my God," she whispered, staring at her computer screen. I understand everything." Around the world, similar scenes were playing out. Paramedic Tony Clark was responding to a car accident when the change hit him. His reflexes became lightning fast, his strength increased dramatically, and his medical knowledge seemed to expand in real time. He saved 3 lives that day using techniques he had never learned, but somehow knew perfectly. In New York, engineer Linda Foster was working on a bridge design when her enhanced capabilities kicked in. She redesigned the entire structure in minutes, creating something that was stronger, more efficient, and more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined possible. Even children were affected. 8-year-old Emma Davis was playing in her backyard when she suddenly understood complex mathematical concepts that her parents could not grasp. 12-year-old Alex Johnson started speaking in languages he had never learned, as if his brain had unlocked hidden knowledge. The Zephyrians watched in amazement and terror as humanity transformed before their eyes. Their sensors detected energy readings from human brains that exceeded the capabilities of their own advanced computers. Physical performances that broke every known biological law were being recorded across the planet. "Commander," Crindle reported, her voice shaking, "human capabilities are now measuring beyond our instrument's ability to record. They are operating at levels we thought were impossible for organic life." Commander Vexter stared at the data streaming across his screens. Humans were lifting objects that weighed tons. They were running at speeds that should have torn their bodies apart. They were solving complex problems that had stumped Zephyrian scientists for decades. But the most frightening aspect was their coordination. Without any communication technology, humans around the world were working together as if they shared a single mind. They were organizing disaster relief, solving global problems, and cooperating on a scale that no species had ever achieved. "Sir," his tactical officer Zilkrath reported, "we are detecting unusual energy patterns from the human population. They appear to be developing abilities that we do not understand." Some humans were displaying what could only be described as supernatural abilities. They could sense danger before it happened, communicate with each other across vast distances, and manipulate their environment in ways that defied known physics. After 11 minutes and 37 seconds, the peak experience ended, but humanity had been permanently changed. They retained much of their enhanced capabilities, and more importantly, they now understood what they truly were. President Jake Collins was in the Oval Office when his enhancement ended. For those brief minutes, he had understood the full implications of what was happening to his species. He knew that humanity would never be the same. "Get me Dr. Morgan," he ordered his chief of staff, "and contact the alien ship. We need to talk." The Zephyrians realized that their time for observation was over. The awakening had been detected by monitoring stations across the galaxy. Other species would soon learn that something extraordinary had happened on Earth. Council leader Morthek made the decision that would change galactic history. "We must make contact with the humans immediately. If we are to have any hope of peaceful coexistence, we must establish communication now, before they decide we are a threat." Commander Vexther nodded grimly. "I will prepare a diplomatic mission to meet with their leaders." The meeting took place 3 days later at the United Nations building in New York. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians came to Earth's surface. Commander Vexther and a small diplomatic team materialized in the assembly hall, their crystal forms glowing softly in the artificial light. President Collins was there, along with Dr. Lisa Morgan and other world leaders. Humans looked different now. They moved with fluid grace. Their eyes held depths of intelligence that had not been there before, and they radiated a quiet confidence that made the Zephyrians nervous. "We come in peace," Vexther said, using the traditional greeting. "But we also come with an apology. We have made a grave error." Dr. Morgan stepped forward. She was no longer the same person who had first detected the alien signal. Her enhanced intelligence allowed her to understand the situation more clearly than any human ever had. "You came here to study us," she said calmly. "You thought we were primitive and weak. But your scanning technology awakened something in us that had been sleeping for thousands of years." Vexther nodded. "We did not intend to change you. We thought we were observing a simple species that posed no threat to galactic peace." "We were wrong." President Collins spoke next. "What exactly are we? What have you turned us into?" The Zephyrian commander considered his words carefully. "You are what you have always been. We simply removed the biological restraints that were keeping you from reaching your full potential. Humans are not a primitive species. You are survivors of a death world who evolved to overcome impossible challenges." The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent its entire existence holding back its true nature, living at a fraction of its potential. The Zephyrians had accidentally revealed what humans could become when those limits were removed. "The question now," Morthek said, joining the conversation via hologram, "is what happens next. Your species has capabilities that exceed most others in the galaxy. How you choose to use those abilities will determine the future of galactic civilization." Dr. Morgan smiled slightly. "Are you asking if we plan to conquer the galaxy?" Thought has occurred to us," Vexther admitted. The human leaders exchanged glances. During their brief awakening, they had glimpsed possibilities that were both wonderful and terrifying. They could indeed conquer the galaxy if they chose to do so. But they had also seen the potential for something better. "We have no interest in domination," President Collins said finally. "We want to learn, to grow, and to find our place among the stars. But we will not be dismissed as weak or primitive ever again." The negotiations that followed lasted for weeks. The Zephyrians agreed to share certain technologies with humanity, helping them develop in ways that would benefit both species. Humans agreed to use their enhanced abilities responsibly and to work toward peaceful coexistence with other galactic civilizations. But the agreement came with warnings. Other species in the galaxy were already learning about humanity's transformation. Some were curious, others were fearful, and a few were openly hostile to the idea of a new power rising in the galaxy. "There will be those who see you as a threat," Morthic warned. "They may try to stop your development before you become too powerful." Dr. Morgan nodded. "We understand. But we also understand something else now. We are not alone in this universe, and we do not have to face its challenges alone either." The story concluded with a ceremony that was broadcast across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species watched as humanity was officially recognized as a galactic civilization. The humans who had been dismissed as feeble and primitive were now acknowledged as one of the most formidable species in known space. Children around the world watched the ceremony with enhanced understanding. Emma Davis and Alex Johnson, along with millions of other young humans, represented the future of their species. They would grow up knowing their true potential, never again limited by artificial restraints. But the galaxy had also changed. The balance of power that had existed for millennia was shifting. Some species welcomed humanity's rise, seeing opportunities for cooperation and growth. Others viewed it as a threat to their own dominance. The Zephyrians' mission to study a primitive species had become something far more significant. They had awakened a sleeping giant that would change the course of galactic history. Whether that change would bring peace or conflict remained to be seen. Commander Vexler stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the blue and green planet below. Earth no longer seemed like an insignificant world orbiting an unremarkable star. It was the home of humanity, a species that had proven that appearances could be deceiving. The humans had been dismissed as feeble until the aliens scanned them. Now, the galaxy would never underestimate them again. The age of humanity among the stars had begun, and no one could predict where it would lead. But one thing was certain: the quiet little planet in the Sol system would never be ignored again. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.